Hey everybody, it's springtime in Utah. You know what that means. It's time to clean out those yards, get your gardening tools out, and the perfect place for you to go is Hobby Tractor.
If you're one of those people that go out and rent equipment from one of these local rental companies every year, either a small backhoe, an industrial lawnmower, a lawn aerator machine, tillers, any of those sorts of things, have you ever thought about not taking that money and renting those every year and actually investing that into your own equipment? If that's something you do often, I suggest that you go over and see Scott and Lance Sage over at Hobby Tractor. See if they can get you into one of their great deals they have going on right now for the springtime. And you can save some money and own your own piece of equipment so that you can use it for years to come. They also offer full service maintenance on all makes and models tractors, sell your parts. So if you have an old tractor, you have an old lawnmower that you just need to get fixed up, bring it over to Lance and Sage, a Hobby Tractor, and one of their two locations in Pleasant Grove or Roosevelt, and see if they can help you out today. We recommend Hobby Tractor because that's who we do business with. They support us here on the Surviving Life's Pickles podcast, and we support them. So go in and check them out, and we hope that you have a fantastic day. Thank you for tuning in to part one of my story. I hope you have enjoyed it and that it has resonated with you. Today, you're going to hear part two of my mental health journey and what's happened over the last couple years. I just wanted to stop here and just give you guys a heads up and a little disclaimer for those who are sensitive. This part of my journey will have references to drug abuse, alcohol abuse, and also suicide. So just wanted to give everybody that information before diving into this episode, but I do feel that the information that we share in this is very needed for those out there who are struggling.
If Scott's story has resonated with you at all, please like and comment. Let us know what you think about it. And please, if there's anyone out there struggling, share this episode with them so that we can let them know that they are not alone and there's always hope and there's always help out there.
So thank you again for tuning in. Here is part two of my mental health journey.
Welcome back, everybody. Another awesome episode of Surviving Life's Pickles. I'm Scott Martin, and I'm here with Brett Harrison today. How you doing, Brett?
I'm doing good, man. I love the new setup. Excited to be here. We could have been recording beforehand.
We really could have. We really could have. Well, everybody, this is part two of my personal story and the Numb series that we're doing, talking about men's mental health and the growth that we've done as men over the last couple decades. But before we dive into the summary from part two and into the rest of my story, we're going to hit this gratitude thing like we do every time. And Brett, what are you grateful for today, my man?
I mean, just carrying on from our previous conversation, something that we were kind of talking about was the life, and it's very generalized, but it's also very specific, that I have today. Individuals like myself, like yourself, usually don't get the opportunities that we have, and so I'm extremely blessed. Consider myself to be extremely fortunate. As I was listening to the first half of the podcast and kind of hearing your story, just like being able to sit there and kind of connect with you, even though you weren't there. Hearing you do something that is the whole reason why I do what I do, the whole reason why I became a therapist was I wanted to do something, how I used to state it was, I wanted to put this firsthand shit knowledge to good use. My past experiences, my difficulties, I wanted them to have meaning. And so being able to come here today, I'm one individual that if I can, I will veg out and isolate and just stay away. And so getting out can be difficult, but the second that I get here, the second that I meet you, we embrace, see your smile, like in your energy, your presence, it instantly fills me up. And is an instant reminder as well of where I used to be, where I'm no longer am, and just how fortunate enough I am to be in the position that I am today and have all the people, all the things in my life that I have today. You and your lovely wife included. I'm excited to go out to dinner later, so I'm grateful for that because I'm a fat kid and I like to eat.
Oh, well, I'm kind of gonna bounce right off that because I'm grateful for the experiences that has led me to this moment this past year. And there's a lot that's happened. There's a lot we're going to discuss here shortly, but it's those experiences. It's, I almost want to say the joy of being able to now actually share them with people to hopefully help that one person that needs to help right now. I'm grateful that I'm here to be able to do that. I'm also extremely grateful for Hillary. I would not be sitting in this chair or doing as well as I'm doing without her continued support of me, of my passion, and her support of wanting to help people just as much as I do, sharing stories through our podcast. So just it's been a great journey, and we're keep going. So
You tricked her good, dude.
yeah, I did. So really quick, everybody. So Brett Harrison, you're going to actually see an episode as I interview him and we talk about his story later on in a few weeks. But I've asked him here today to kind of switch the script a little bit because just like I interviewed my first part with Emily, my current therapist, I wanted to bring Brett in. We are friends, but he is also a extremely well-known therapist in the recovery world and with veterans. He does extremely good work in that field now. And I wanted to bring him in and use this episode as if I was sitting in his therapy office and we were interviewing each other to see if he would be a good therapist for me, I would be a good person, client for him, but exploring my story and my journey through that interview process, I felt it was the best way that I could truly be authentic with sharing what I needed to share. So, Brett, thank you for being willing to sit here and interview me and dive deep into some of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I can tell you right now, way easier to be on this side.
Sometimes.
It feels it, dude.
Yeah.
It feels it. I was
Yeah.
quite nervous when I came in the first time.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you letting me pay it forward, my man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you showed up today. So let's do a quick recap. Part one, we pretty much ran up to the time that I was 21, 22. I had just had my first drink. I'd been arrested, street racing with the kids in the car. My life was just kind of crumbling, but at the same time, I was starting to experience life. Up to that point, my views of a man was the man was supposed to be the man of the house. The man was supposed to be the guy in charge. He was supposed to take care of everything. And so I had all this weight on me. I'd been the man of the house since I was 12 years old. When my dad and mom separated, I became the man of the house and I took that role on because there was nobody else to do it. And so I've always had that since that young age of trying to be in charge, trying to take responsibility for the things that are happening, not necessarily being my problem, but I felt that I had to because that was what the man of the house was supposed to do. He was supposed to take the blunt of the problems. And up to that point, that's what I had done. I got married young, had kids young, and was working a couple jobs, going to school, all that stuff. And again, trying to be the man of the house. And so I literally, and we said it good when we talked before we started, that first drink, that first outing with my buddies, I literally just kind of imploded. That was kind of the start of my spiral downhill for the next 10 years.
And for me, like, I know that I asked you the question before, I'll ask it right now. Like, you have done a lot, a considerable amount of difficult work on yourself. And was it the implosion, or was it that drink led to the implosion? But in that moment, that was like, I found it. I found that next thing, that next solution, the next
high, the next fun, the next exhilarating. I think you put it to the next adrenaline rush. And it makes sense because I'd been racing cars. I'd been doing all that at that time, and I was kind of getting boring. I needed something new.
On to the next. On to the next. On to the next.
Yeah. So without going into any details, let's just kind of run through just a real rough. Stop me if there's anything we want to dive into a little bit more. I don't want to go into a lot of the dirty details over the next 10 years, but I want people to have a good idea of the things that I went through.
Absolutely. And something that I want to throw out there is that, like, it's absolutely something that I'm passionate about, that I love to do, which is getting the opportunity to know individuals in a way and in a manner that not many others have had the privilege of being able to do, including many times like they're your closest and your supports, because of kind of what we discussed. Before you can understand it, you got to be able to open yourself up and dive into it. And so, like, if you and I were meeting, like, this is exactly what we would be doing. Like, part of that first therapy session is building that rapport and that trust. And especially when an individual comes in, they're not coming in because they're just like, you know what, I really, quite often individuals, not always, but quite often individuals aren't like, I just really want to expand myself and work on myself and, try some new things out. Pain can be a big motivator. Many of us that come to these spaces, we know pain all too well. And so for me, like, pain brings us here. And for me, like, during these first initial sessions, I'm always trying to find that golden thread of what is your why. And as I heard your first story, that first part, that first half of your life, like, that's what I saw over and over. You just trying to find yourself. That's what I wrote down here. Do it all on my own. And I do have my pad and my paper and my pencil. And that's what I wrote down as you were kind of describing that, was that I had to do it all on my own. And when I hear that, doing it all on my own, like right next to it, I put equals alone. And so as we go through this process, just know that I'll be asking specific questions. You've already given me consent to do so. If I see your body like shifting away, I'll be like, what was that? Hey, let's slow down, with trying to keep things on track. But I'm going to let you guide this conversation. Like, quite often, a lot of individuals haven't even gone into their past because they just don't know how, and let alone telling their whole story. And that can be quite insightful for individuals, is just to get that opportunity to have their story heard, raw, real, genuine, authentic. And so I'm excited to hear the second half, my dude.
Well, and as we do it, there's one thing that just came to my mind. It's very at the forefront, and a big part of this, the reason we started this podcast, is if we can help at least one person, I have succeeded. And part of this interview today is being that vulnerable person for those guys out there that are listening that are scared to go to therapy. They're scared to sit down and talk to somebody. They're scared to find out what really makes them tick. I hope that this helps them realize that it's not scary. It's hard, but it's not scary. And if you're willing to put the work in and willing to be honest with yourself while somebody else listens, and I want to make that clear, you're being honest with yourself while somebody listens in. That's what this is. You're not trying to tell them something they don't want to hear. You're talking to yourself and they're listening into your conversation. And that's what therapy is for me. And that's why this is important to set it up in this format today for me.
Absolutely. And coinciding with that, with what you said in the beginning, and I really want to emphasize and highlight it, is, you being able to express joy and gratitude for the pain in your past.
Yeah.
And when we're in it, we're in it. I know what brought me here, those times I never would have been like, I'm so grateful that life is horrible right now. And yet, those are the moments that I was able to grow through, because I was able to do exactly what you just said. Sit down with another human being that didn't judge me, that didn't have any agendas other than just seeing me and hearing me.
Yeah. And it's back to that first episode we did when we launched this thing. It's turning our pain into purpose bringing knowledge to the forefront so somebody else doesn't have to struggle as much. They can seek help before they get to that point.
Yep.
So, well, let's dive into this. So I had my first drink. I've done all that stuff. That's kind of the point of life I'm in. 21, 22. I'm now in my divorce. That started the divorce process for me. And again, we were young. I don't look back at it as a bad thing. We were young. We didn't know what we were doing. We probably would have been awful parents going forward together. Not that either of us are bad people. And so I think the divorce was a good thing. It allowed us to go out and search who we really were. And it allowed us to still be parents to our two daughters at the time.
I was going to say you had 2 kiddos at this time,
Yep,
right?
I had 2. So I did that. During that process, I got criticized a lot for divorce. We live here in Utah. I was getting divorced early. Everybody said I didn't give it a shot. You're only in it a couple of years. We were stupid young kids. We got married for the wrong reasons. And so getting out of that, I was criticized a lot. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to show everybody. So what did I do? I turned right back around, found the first girl that paid attention to me, and I married her again. Stupid. We were only together for 2 years, I think. I don't even really count it because it was so quick. And, it was an awful marriage. There's a lot of things, I don't want to go into all the details. It just didn't work out. She was not the person for me. She was not the person to help me raise my kids. There was a lot of bad things that happened. During that time, I actually experienced physical and emotional abuse from a woman. And guys, if you don't think that's possible, it's possible. It happens. And a lot of that is one thing that never gets talked about is women can actually physically abuse you. Women can emotionally abuse you. There's a lot of things that go on. So that happened. It was really quick. And we got divorced. No kids, none of that. Thank goodness. We were able to split ways. We've only talked maybe 4 or 5 times since then. And it was just because as we moved multiple different times, we would each find stuff of the other person's that we would drop off. And literally that's pretty much the gist of it since then. From there, and I don't want to discredit any of these items, but again, I don't want to dive into any of these deep things unless you have questions that you want to talk about as we go through these, Brett. From there, from that divorce and during that time, I really dove into my alcoholism. I was drinking 5 days a week, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the extent of it. When I got divorced from her, that's when the drugs came in. I had met some friends through work, introduced to, my first bit, and I am not that guy. I did not touch any marijuana, any THC, none of that.
Why is that?
Why
is it that you were not
I was never
guy
introduced to the easy stuff. I went right to the hard stuff right out of the gate.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what my friends had, and that was exhilarating. And so for the next 8 years, I did everything. All of them. The only one I never touched, and still this day have never touched, is heroin. Which is ironic because that was Hillary's choice.
Mm-hmm.
That is the only one. I have, cocaine, meth, ecstasy, Molly, all of them I have experimented with during this 8-year period of time. I moved in with my dealer during this time because, hey, you come in and pay my rent, I'll supply you with free stuff all you want. Oh, that sounds like a great deal. Let's do that. So that all happened. I kind of started seeing that, hey, this isn't the life I want to be. I had my kids in that situation. I was very sheltering them for everything going on. They really never knew until actually last year when we had a discussion and they found out that, oh, hey, he was your dealer. Okay, all these things starting to make sense. That they put it together.
Are adding up. Mm-hmm.
But they understand. They're older now and they get it. Like, they're not blaming me. They understand, and that makes me feel good. That they're not blaming me for what I did. They understand that I had an issue. So at that next point, I had met my boy's mom. And, it was a couple years in between that. And so I met her. We went back and forth. Things were really good. We ended up, getting married. And then this is where the bulk of a lot of stuff. I was hiding the drugs from her the entire marriage.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't know. Like I was very, very good at hiding them. So I was still doing that. We were drinking all the time. But in the course of our marriage, I broke my back. I lost 80% of my spinal fluid when I broke my back.
Mm.
Almost died. During that experience, I had actually asked her and a couple of friends to just take my life because I could not stand the pain. If anybody's ever had their spinal fluid drained, what happens is your brain literally starts cooking.
Mm.
Like it was so hot, it because there's nothing in there cooling. That spinal fluid is your cooling fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in the most excruciating pain I've ever been in my life. The back break was nothing compared to what my brain was doing when I was in bed. So that had happened. The next thing that kind of happened was we had miscarriages as we were trying to have kids again. That's rough. Anybody who's dealt with infertility, they understand the struggles, the mental, the physical, everything that goes on with that. We then got pregnant and ended up having a baby girl prematurely who only survived for about an hour. And that experience in itself is its own story. So that was traumatic. That was a big thing, but I still, at that point, I couldn't get it. I was still trying to work. I was still trying to be the man. I was still trying to be the whole support system for her at that time. And it drove me to that because, I was trying to do everything myself.
Saying, who was there for you?
There wasn't. Like, people reached out, but none of them really knew how to deal with it. Nobody in my life at that point. I mean, because I had separated myself a lot from my family because of my addictions.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't know how to approach me or reach out. They didn't know what I needed.
Did you know rather what you needed?
I didn't. I had no idea what I needed at that point. The only thing I needed is to feel good and not feel that. And so that's why I was diving into that. The one thing I didn't go into was because of my back. What is the number one thing that happens with back surgery patients afterwards?
I'm waving my hand like a little pill bottle right now.
The pill bottles. It's the opioids. This was 2010.
Okay.
Right in the middle of the mess.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when my addiction to pills started. They were easy to get. I had a back injury. I could get as many as I wanted. I started using them. I started selling them.
Yep.
So that was part of that mess as well.
In addition to significant grief and loss, tons of blame, tons of shame, trying to work through your pain, significant physical pain, which takes a hell of a toll on your psyche.
Well, it ruined me. I mean, I was overweight at the time. And the doctor told me while I was laying there in the hospital bed that I would never run again. I broke my back playing church ball. So I like sports. And the fact that he told me that was like, took my whole identity away in a sense. It was a long recovery. I was actually bedridden for 3 months because of my spinal fluid issue. That doesn't happen when you have back injuries. So I had a whole different recovery and a lot longer because of that, because my back seized up and I had to do a lot of physical therapy to get back. But that started. I mean, right after that was when we had our daughter, and lost her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got all this extra addiction. I've got this, doctors telling me I can't do it and I'm trying to get through it. So at that point, things changed a little bit. I said, hey, I'm not going to be that guy. I was extremely overweight. That was part of the issue. I was 340 pounds at the time. I mean, I was a big guy. So I took it upon myself to start exercising, and I lost 160 pounds over the next 12 to 18 months. I learned how to diet. I learned nutrition. I learned how to exercise. And so I was starting to feel in a good spot. But then the funny thing is during that time, I was introduced to pre-workouts. And pre-workouts at that time had amphetamines in them. They were not regulated. And so now I'm starting to get addicted to these amphetamines in the pre-workouts, which then led to the other stuff later on, because this is awesome. And I'm using this to work out and I'm feeling better and I'm losing weight. Look at me go.
And for someone where you're at, where it's like, because you said it again, like, I'm not that guy. I'm the guy that can figure it out. I have the ability to figure it out, and I will figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
regardless of what's happening in here. And I'm pointing to my heart and in my head, meaning for you, what's taking place in those two positions. And so you get introduced to something that's like go juice.
Oh yeah. It was like, I mean, we called it my human nitrous oxide. I mean, because I was still into cars and stuff, and that's what it was.
Fitting.
Very fitting, right? So, but all that's happened. I'm starting to do really good. We had started a couple businesses, lost them. Lost our house because of the business loss. We ended up filing bankruptcy. And again, I'm being very vulnerable here. Most people don't talk about these things.
Yep.
I lost both of my grandparents during this time as well. They were the rocks I always had in my life. I looked up to my grandpa. He was one of those. He was my second dad.
Yep.
And kind of stepped in and was my dad for a little while, when my dad was struggling with his stuff and wasn't quite around all the time when they first got divorced. And I look back, and he was a manly guy. He was a firefighter, an EMT, owned his own construction business after that. He was the manly man. He did all the man stuff. But he was also very caring and compassionate. I didn't ever see him cry until his later years, but I did see his emotions. But I was afraid to share my emotions in front of him because I was afraid I was going to disappoint him. And during that time, he gave me a nickname. It has stuck through my whole life since then. Only a few friends still know it that are still in contact with me during that time. But he used to call me Doughhead. And it stuck. And at first, I was really taken back, and I was really offended by it. He's just saying, I have a doughhead. But then he explained it to me. He's like, you take all this information, you suck it in the dough, but then it just bounces around and you never do anything with the dough. He's like, you never need it. You never put it to use. You're just a doughhead. And every time I would do something stupid, he's like, well, there's the doughhead again, just going in. We've already talked about this before.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked up to him, all the way. And not until his last couple of years. My grandma died first. And so he was alone. We'd actually moved. We took, me and my wife at the time were caretakers. We were over there 2 to 3 days a week, helped him at the house and everything until he moved into his final place, his assisted living. I got to know him a lot. I got to see him very vulnerable during that time. And that helped me understand that it's okay to share your emotions, especially with those around you and those who love you. But it was still hard. Like, I still didn't want to talk to him. He'd ask me hard questions. He'd ask me how I'm doing it. I just couldn't do it.
And think about it. I mean, I know how much they meant to you because I heard you during the first half of this episode when you mentioned them during your childhood. When dad was away, when things were difficult, they were there for you. And this individual that you admired so much that you just did not want to let down begins to open up about his emotions, begins to show a different side. But when's he showing it? He's showing it right at the end of his life, in his golden years, when you guys are taking care of him, which is incredible. Yet here you are stuck still with this. I've got to be this person. I must not be that person. Or as you've stated, I must not be that guy.
I wanted to be the strong one. He needed somebody strong for him at that point because he couldn't do it himself.
So again, on top of everything that you have going on, more that you're just like, okay, put it on my shoulders. I got this. I've got to do this for him.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, we don't know what we don't know. In those moments, you didn't know how to do anything with all of this added weight.
Yeah. Well, and one thing just to kind of cover is during that time, I got clean for about 2.5 years of alcohol. I was still doing all the other stuff behind the scenes and hiding it. Not as much. I had cut back quite a bit, but I still was.
And so what I often tell individuals that I work with, a lot of individuals that are functionally going through life, hiding, doing what they need to do, I tell individuals from my own personal experiences that, like, it is way more exhaustive, depleting, to try and do everything that you're discussing right now that you are doing while hiding it and keeping it thriving and moving forward than just going like straight balls to the wall, like 100% diving all in, not caring about anything else. From my personal experiences and what I've seen in my professional experiences, way more exhaustive, way more depleting to try and like live. And what I'm hearing with you, these not just a double life, but like 15 different lives going on at once.
Yeah. Explains sometimes why I feel like I'm 80 years old, right?
Versus just saying you have an old soul.
Yeah.
You're like, no kidding.
Yeah, I've lived multiple lives. I've never really heard or thought about it in that way. So
Yeah.
that's a good way.
And so if you're, I mean, I guess like the message, right, that you're putting out there with your story is that anything that you can relate to, it might be something to give yourself a moment to pause and see, you know, hey, maybe I can reach out.
Yeah.
Maybe I am not so alone in this.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, all that happened. He passed away. And, at this time, me and my wife started not doing well. And things happened, and we ended up trying to fix things physically with other people.
Mm.
We all know how that story ends. We don't need to go down that road. But because we went down that road, then the alcohol came back. Both of us. I mean, because she had stopped too. Like, we had both stopped drinking for 2-3 years during that period. So we started drinking again. Everything started coming back. We ended up moving away because we figured, hey, let's get away from everybody. Let's kind of start over. So we moved up north, moved away. Honestly, it just made things worse because now we were the only two people we had, and we were a mess. And so we were, I just dove into it again, like seriously. And then that's when I was introduced to THC for the first time, was at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, hey, this will maybe help. It's a little less crazy. Maybe it'll help calm down. And so, all right, let's try this. And so, tried that. And then, honestly, it did. For a while,
Mm-hmm.
it did make a difference. It helped. It helped me kick the other stuff. Like, I had pretty much kicked all of it at that point now, other than the alcohol. But then it just become, as we moved up there, it become daily. And then when I say daily, I was drinking a fifth to a fifth and a half a night, 7 days a week. I was not sober the minute I got home from work.
Yeah.
I was taking clients out for work, getting drunk and coming home. Like, that was cool. That's what we were doing. We'd go out to the breweries, we'd go out and do all this stuff. And that was my life. And it was accepted and everything was fine. We live right next to Hill Air Force Base.
Mm.
And, in the community up there, it's not as LDS prominent as it is around other places because it is the base. And there's a lot of people from all over the world and country that live around us.
A little more diverse, yeah.
It is. And so it was just more accepted. It was easier. And it got really bad. And we tried to fix our marriage, and we just didn't. We couldn't fix it. It was past that point, and we finally had both realized that I fought as much as I could. I figured I could still fix it, right? I'm the guy. I'm the one that needs to fix my issues. I'm the one that needs to step in here. I'm the one that needs to take the responsibility. And I did. But that drove me even deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the breaking point. And I'll never forget this day. I got to the point where I was just done. She was done. I do not blame her at all. I am grateful for that day now. But the cops were called because I was so done. I was all out of control. And the cops were called. And I will never forget the moment. As I am bawling my eyes out, sitting on my living room floor, as the cops pull my little boy out of my hand.
Mm-hmm.
And say, you got to let him go. And I just couldn't. And the other officer had to hold me back. And after that moment, that's what the cops had gone out the door, told me what was going to happen. And nobody got hurt. I want to be very clear. It wasn't like physical abuse. There was none of that had happened. I was just way beyond where I should have been mentally. And at that point, after the cops had shut the door and I was sitting there with myself in this big empty house, that was the last day I ever had a drink of alcohol.
Mm.
That was the point where I realized this is not worth it. My family is important.
And yet, what are you still left with? Now you've taken away the thing that inevitably led you to that point, that day, that moment, and you can see it. You can see it in you right now. When you talk about moments in your life, you have this thing that you do where there's some shame there, where you'll like go to get into it and then your eyes will kind of like roll.
Yeah.
When you're talking about this moment, no, you've been locked on, like you're there. And so for me, that's like the question that I have, which is take away the alcohol. Now what do you do?
That was the thing. I didn't know what to do.
Mm.
So I dove back into alcohol was gone, but I dove back into, I still had the THC. I was using that. It definitely, it did help. But then I dove, back into some other stuff for a brief second because I caught myself and says, no, that's not where I need to be. I need to be here. I need to fix this for my kids. I need to be a better person. So I did go to therapy, found an amazing therapist, one of two therapists that I have ever just absolutely connected with, loved, feel that they were truly helping me for me. And they had all of my personal interest in their interest. So she was amazing. She actually runs a couple of her own clinics now and isn't a practicing therapist anymore, but it's because she was an amazing person. She's now teaching people how to do it. So I am so thankful for her. So I went to see her for a long time. Things got really good. We got divorced. I moved. We both moved back down to Utah County. And we only live a few blocks away from each other, so that the kids were here. I was clean. I was happy. I dove back into my workout routines. I had my midlife crisis Camaro at the time. So I was out hitting, doing that and everything. And then, after a while, I started dating again and things were still great. And I was down to the point where I was using THC very little, maybe once a week, maybe once every other week. I mean, not very often at all. And I met my beautiful wife, Hillary, on the wonderful, amazing Tinder app. We both swiped right. And things were fantastic. She was my person. We instantly connected with music. We instantly connected with recovery. We were instantly supporting each other in what we were doing. And that has made a huge difference, our entire relationship. And we were instantly both very, very vulnerable with each other from the get-go. We've had our little ups and downs, but we've always have been very vulnerable, and that has helped me still to this day. Like, it's the reason we're still together, is because we're able to sit down and talk about stuff. So then we've been together for 3 years. Things have been going really good. And then you get that medical thing that happens. And I had been really sick. We didn't know why. Ended up finding out that I went and spent in the hospital because I just super sick, lots of things going on. And they take me in and they come out and they'd done all these tests, done an endoscopy, a colonoscopy, all these blood work, all these samples, everything. And the doctor comes in and says, you've got cancer cells in your colon. We need to go in and take them out now. Something nobody wants to hear.
No. And what a medical blow like that feels like, what it could potentially entail.
Because I'd already had one. Well, and something I didn't touch on is during my alcoholism those last couple years, I was actually hospitalized twice and I went into kidney failure both times because of my alcohol consumption. So I had been there. So, but at this time, I mean, this hit.
Well, it's different, right? When you're putting yourself there of your own,
Your own causes.
yes,
And now that,
essentially.
yeah,
And then this thing happens, life is going good.
yeah,
Oh shit.
yeah. And at this point, really, I still not a drop of alcohol, not really using THC at all because, Hillary fulfilled all of my needs and, I was active and lots of things were going on. So this blow happens and I just felt just beat down. What are we going to do? Like, literally those conversations with those doctors those next few weeks, we had so many different opinions. I mean, one doctor says, hey, let's go in and just take your whole colon out right now and be done with it. And this other doctor, hey, let's go in and do this. Hey, let's look at these options. Like you name it. And we had all these options. We finally found an amazing doctor who's like, no, we're going to go in, we're going to cut all this out and we're going to come back in 3 months and check it. So, I mean, they'd cut it all out, and we'd seen all these doctors and we'd met him. And so we waited 3 months, went back in. Everything was still okay. We went back in 3 months later. It was back. Again, let's go in and cut all this stuff out. We're still catching this in early stages. It's not a stage 2. It's not made it past that, which it's very treatable and it's a very slow progressing. But when I say like they found cancer cells, like not 1 or 2,
yeah,
we're talking 60 plus little pockets, like a big amount. And they went down. And so during that time, somebody told me about this item that you can just buy. And hey, this is like a pain pill. This will make you feel better. And it's called Kratom.
Mm-hmm.
It's legal. It's okay. I'd also gone back because now I had this, I could get my medical card and take THC again. Hey, this gives me a freebie. It's legal now. I have a prescription for it.
I can go to any store.
I can go anywhere. And I worked in construction at the time where, it's very regulated and we have to be very careful. We're in a very dangerous environment. We have to work in a drug-free environment. But I got a pass because I could get this medical card. And then I found this drug called Kratom where you can buy it at any gas station. You can buy it at any smoke shop here in Utah. And because I found that, I was like, all right, I got these 2 things now. Let's go. This is legal and I can do it. And I went down that road and I managed. And when I say managed, I managed.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to get through work. I was able to get through life and still kind of struggling because I still had in this back of my head, what's going to happen in 3 months when I have to go back in? Is this thing going to be back? And we kept talking and the conversations still are there of, do we need to pull your colon out? Because if this continues, that's the easiest solution instead of diving in. And some doctors will disagree. Some doctors will say, let's treat this with radiation. Let's kill it. Let's do this. Other doctors are like, let's just take it out because that's where it is. And if we take it out, you don't have any issues.
Other than everything that will follow, having your colon removed.
And there is, and we've actually done some research. We've talked to people, and again, we're still in this. We still haven't been completely cleared. We're still going in. They're still finding stuff, but we're treating it that way currently because we're on top of it. And so it's still not off the table. Who knows what will happen over the next year or 2? We're just living. But the last time I went in, and so that went on for about a year. And because that was 2 years ago when that happened. So it went on for about a year. And then last time I went in, the first of 24. Hey, you only had 2 cancerous cells this time. Huge, right? Gone down from like 40 to 60 each time to 2.
Yeah.
But I had changed my diet. I had changed my workout. I was really taking care of myself. Other than I had the THC and the Kratom that was making me feel better because of, I don't have to deal with the pain. I don't have to deal with this, made me feel better. So that was a win. So I actually kind of stopped. I had the THC, but I kind of stopped using the kratom.
Mm.
Kind of went off it. Um,
How difficult was that? I'm just curious.
the first time was pretty easy. That time was not that hard. It was,
Well,
hey, because it was springtime for me.
mm-hmm.
I just got into mountain biking pretty good again. That's kind of what I started diving my time into. And so I replaced it with exercise. And so it was actually it was hindering my exercise because kratom, some of the things it'll do is you retain anywhere from 30 to 40% more water.
Hmm.
It screws up your entire digestive system. It gives you shortness of breath because what it does is it causes ulcers and different things that make you not be able to breathe. So, it takes some of your lung capacity down because of that. So it was actually starting to hinder what I started to enjoy. And so it was easy. It was kind of like, hey, I'm going to get rid of this because I can't do what I like to do because it's affecting that. I was able to realize that.
You had a reason.
I had a reason.
Yep.
And so kind of got off that. Things were going good. Work was going really good. All that happened. That was about a 6-month period. We went back into November and boom. Guess what?
It's back.
It's back. We have more. Holy cow. Okay. This is still happening. This is still going on. So first thing I did is I wanted to feel better. I went down to the store and I bought some.
Yep.
And that just started compiling because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to compartmentalize what was going on with me. And that was my easy out. So I dove into using THC very heavy. I dove into using kratom very heavy daily. And I mean, it got really bad. It was affecting my job.
Mm-hmm.
It was affecting my family. I mean, it was doing a lot.
Oh, that's me. Sorry.
So, at that point, I was just spiraling. I mean, really, everything started kind of unwinding. Work kind of started falling apart. I wasn't performing. They could see it. I could see it. I just didn't care. Mine and Hillary's relationship still good, but not as good as it was. Like I was starting to isolate. I wasn't talking to her as much. She had no idea I'd started again. And so I was hiding that from her because she knew the dangers of it because we had started looking into it after the last time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want her to take that burden.
Again,
I wanted to be the strong man. I wanted to handle everything myself.
there it is.
Yeah.
And so when I wrote down here, before you started talking, not just the reason, just the exercise, and it's taken away from this, for me, it feels like it goes much deeper than that. Like you got the all clear. I have my life back.
Yeah.
Basically, like going from 60 to 40 to 2.
Yeah.
And so for me, like that is in those moments what I could see definitely being enough to fill that void. And yet the second
that void was back,
yep.
Yeah, I ran right back to it.
Well, because it works.
It worked. I mean, and something just so everybody kind of understands, the easiest way to describe kratom is if anybody's familiar with opioids or even tramadol, is a much similar. Tramadol is a very low, easier prescribed opiate style medication. It makes you just feel good, but it doesn't make you incapacitated. It's very similar to what kratom does. But because there's a lot of different strains of kratom, different ways you can use it, different ways you can take it, because of my history, because of me always wanting to feel the best I could feel, I dove down to the strain that's called the 7-H. And I don't know what the rest of the name is, so everybody off for forgive me. And I don't even want to tell you because, you know what? You don't need to know. You don't need to research it. You don't need to search it out because it's awful. But that strain is 13 times more powerful than morphine. And it's legal. You can buy it anywhere. Up until 2 weeks ago, the second week of March of 2025, Utah State outlawed it. Wonderful thing. But that gives you a little bit of idea about the type of substance this is. 13 times more powerful.
Which just sounds insane hearing you say it out loud. And you can go to most head shops, you can go to most, as you said, gas stations.
Gas station.
Wow.
You can't buy that strain anymore, but you could. There's lots of companies that are being sued. There's lots of things going on right now. This is becoming a problem, and it's becoming more aware. It's still something that needs to be talked about.
Agreed.
And I am really trying to be an advocate and talk about it more publicly because, I mean, last year there was over 100 people that died of it. But getting back to kind of where we were going, I was taking that strain because it made me feel good. It got to a point, and it's ironic we're sitting here today because 1 year ago today is when I hit my breaking point.
Meaning?
I can't tell you why. I just know everything in my life was failing. My job, I felt like my family, I felt like I wasn't here for my kids. All of this was, I just felt like I was failing as a man. I was failing as a father. I was failing as a husband. I was just not good for anybody. I was failing as an employee. I just felt all this pressure, and I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. So Hillary went on a girls' trip, left me alone, didn't have the kids that weekend. So now I'm alone in this mindset in my house, snowing outside. So I can't do anything I want to do. I'm stuck in the house. I have a six-month-old puppy that Hillary had got because we were almost to the point where we were going to take my Colin out and knew I was going to be home for 6 months. So I wanted a companion. And so we got the puppy so we could get him ready. So I had a 6-month-old puppy, 7-month-old puppy, and our other dog, Izzy, at the time, and me in this mindset. Friday on the way home from work, I stopped, bought $100 worth of stuff. It was gone by the next morning. Hey, that was fun. All right, cool. Let's do it again. And this time I bought more. And that happened all day Saturday. That's all I did Saturday. I sat down, watched TV, and hey, I'm feeling good, whatever. And just kept compiling. Sunday, one more time, one more trip to the store. And that started compiling. And then about halfway through Sunday, I'm just like, you know what, I'm just done. And it started not working. Like I wasn't feeling good. I'm like, all right, let's start adding other things into this. And so I did. I had access to other things, and I started adding those into the mix. And that went all afternoon. And I talked to Hillary a little bit during the day. And now I know I was reaching out for help, but I wasn't being specific. But at the same time, I didn't want to bug her. She was away. She was on a girls' trip, and I wanted her to enjoy her trip. So again, I'm not compartmentalizing and keeping this to myself because I don't want to hinder anybody else with my pain. And it kept going. I'm just like, I don't care anymore. And everybody's going to be better off if I'm not here. So I went to bed that night knowing 100% feeling I was not going to wake up the next morning because I had pushed my limits too far. And I was okay with it. I had said I reached out and told my kids I loved them. I told Hillary I loved them. I went to bed that night telling my puppy I loved him. Thank you. Mom will be here tomorrow to take care of you. Because I knew I wasn't going to wake up. Couple hours after not being able to fall asleep at that point, my body was a mess. And when I say 20 milliliters of that strain of kratom can kill somebody, I had taken close to 600.
Over the course of
24 hours.
Yes.
On top of
the 2 days before too.
On top of everything else. It was a lot. Most people never make it out. But a couple hours into that where I couldn't sleep and I knew I wasn't going to make it. I prayed. I don't want this to happen. I have more to do here, and there's people counting on me. And if I'm not here in the morning, my puppy's not going to make it. It's the thoughts that went through my head.
It's a very dark, lonely place
It is.
to be.
And obviously, by the grace of God, I woke up the next morning. Oh boy, was I sick. But did I reach out and tell anybody?
Nope.
I sat and I fought through it. I threw up all day. I was on all day long, just sick. I'd called into work because that was Sunday night. I called in sick to work Monday. And Hillary didn't go home until Monday night. And by that time, she's like, "Oh, you're not feeling good." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not feeling good. I just kind of blew it off. I'm not feeling good. I'm going to go to bed early." So I did. Woke up the next morning. And that Tuesday morning, I will never forget it. We listen to the Frankie and Jess podcast most mornings when we get ready together. Hillary usually starts and I'll finish it on my drive when I leave. And that morning, they had my therapist on. I was introduced to her on that episode. They were talking about ketamine therapy. They were talking about all these different out of the normal type of things that help people who are really struggling. When that episode finished, I had to pull over and I started crying because I knew I needed help. And all the other things I had tried, I always ended back in the same place. So I needed to try something different. And I just felt the universe calling to me that you need to call her now. Without thinking about it, I found her information in the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I called her. I set up an appointment. I talked to her that Thursday. And after I talked to her that Thursday, I will never forget. She's like, "Wow, you've been through a lot. Let me help you." And so I still had not told Hillary. I had still not told anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I signed up. It was a brand new business. She'd been doing it a very long time, but this is her first group situation and first treatment that she was doing with her new business called Koru Wellness. And so she invited me to join the group. So I joined. I had to go through my medical intake and all this stuff to make sure it was safe for me. But I joined. Didn't talk to Hillary. Didn't do anything. I joined. I came home that night and told Hillary, "I need help. I'm not doing good."
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I said. I need to try something different. I know you listen to the episodes. I'm telling you, I have to try this. And I need this right now. She's like, I told her I was struggling. I just didn't know how else to do it. So she, not even blinked an eye, we'll figure a way to make it work. Okay. I'm like, good, because I already signed up. And so I started my treatment. So what happened from that point is so again, she still didn't know
Everything.
Yep. And we were going on vacation the next week. So again, what I was taking was legal. You can't drug test for it currently. But I felt that the right thing to do was to tell my boss, this is what's going on, because I was putting myself at risk.
Yep.
And I was putting other people at risk in situations they didn't need because of our dangerous environment we work in. So I felt an obligation to let them know. So I let them know. They had to talk about, again, this is something they never dealt with. Because they're like, "Well, we can't test you. Like, it's not going to show up. So how do we know?" Like, this is a whole new situation for them. So we came to an agreement how we were going to do this. It was an 8-week program I was going to do with her, 8-week treatments, doing therapy every weekend. So we decided together that, okay, if you can do your treatments and you can still function, we'll let you be in the office and work. It was a mutual agreement. I felt that was best for me because me being home sitting alone was just going to put me back in that same situation. That's not where I wanted to be.
Yep.
And so being able to actually go to work and do something and be around people, I thought was better than nothing.
Well, and think about this. Like, this belief that you have of that my pain is too much for others. If I share what's going on with me, I'm just going to be burdensome. You hit this point where, for whatever reason, that podcast hit the day that it hit after the weekend that you had when you were at your absolute low point where you were just wanting the pain, the suffering at this point in time to be over. Even though you wanted it to be over a different way, you were okay if it went the direction that it did. Grateful that it didn't. Unable to open up to anyone. You hit that point and that pain was like, reach out. Reach out to this woman and do something different. That starting with her, like I'm starting to see the dominoes, because how terrified were you going into work and being like, hey guys,
Yeah.
so this is what's happening. And then they're making these accommodations. They're dealing with this the first time. You can't tell me that that wasn't like pinging that. Why did you say that?
Oh, well, and even Hillary is like, why did you even tell him? Because they can't test you for it. She's like, but let's kind of clean that. Let's start that up just a minute, because Hillary didn't know
Fully.
She didn't know. I told him I was struggling. I was going to do this. I was in a mental health crisis. That's what she kind of thought I was telling them at work.
Yeah.
So she's like, why did you tell them? Because now this is all happening. Because she still didn't know about the Kratom. So that happened. I went into work. We decided, okay, I couldn't drive a company truck. What I totally understand. No, great. It was a safety issue, blah, blah, no problem. So, I didn't drive a truck for a few weeks during this time. And, my work schedule changed, but that all happened. Me and Hillary were actually going on vacation the 2 days after I told them.
Mm-hmm.
So they go ahead and they just said, hey, why don't you take an extra day? Just do this. When you come back, we'll start this new work thing, because we're going to be gone for a week. So when you come back, we'll start this new work schedule and we'll just work through this. You're going to start your treatment. Well, my treatment started while we were on vacation. I had to do my intake via Zoom because that's when everything was scheduled. And she's like, if you're going to do this, you're going to have to do it. She's like, I'll accommodate you because I think you need this.
Yes. Her statement, I want to help you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew before that Saturday Zoom, I had to tell Hillary. So we are driving to Colorado on vacation. Spend a week in Colorado in a cabin, go to Red Rocks at a concert, all this stuff. And I'll remember we are about Steamboat Springs.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked over and I says, I got to tell you something.
And we're kind of chuckling right now because I can just envision it. The moment you leave here, it's in the back of your mind.
The whole trip.
Yes.
Well, and I told her, I told her that we need to talk more about this on the trip.
Yeah.
And so she kept pressuring me, you ready to talk about it? I'm like, not ready. I'm not ready. And finally, I'm like, I got to tell her. And so I just leaned over and I said, look, the big reason I had to do this is because the Kratom's back. And still her response is why I'm so grateful. She looked at me and said, it's okay.
Mm.
We're going to get through it. I'm sad you didn't tell me before, but I'm going to support you through this. And that response changed everything. So I kid you not, I was detoxing like an SOB.
On that trip.
I was, and it is worse than coming off anything else. You have the chills, you have diarrhea, you have the throwing up, you have everything for days. I was sick our entire vacation. But I kid you not, every time I went into a gas station to carry it, I tried to buy some.
Oh, absolutely.
Every time.
Despite everything,
because I didn't want to be sick.
Yes.
I was so tired of being sick. I wanted to enjoy my vacation. And bless her heart, every time she walked in, what are you doing?
Nothing, dear.
And so we made it through the trip. And I came back, and that's when I started my in-person treatment. And it was awesome. Without going into, we could spend an entire couple hours on my therapy and my ketamine treatments. One thing I wanted to just say is when they talk about ketamine and what it really does, it truly, truly does help remap those broken pathways in your brain. It helps you heal if you're willing to let it. I have to be very clear, because if you're not willing to let it help you, if you don't accept it, it won't. And I resisted the first couple treatments. But then my body started being like, just let this happen. And it started working. I accepted it. I wanted it to work. We worked through it. And it was absolutely amazing. I came out of that treatment feeling like a new person. Hillary, even just every week, I got better and better, and she just could tell and she could see it. And I felt like now I can accomplish, and I felt like it was okay to be emotional in front of her. I felt it was okay to share these things. Finally, she's the first person I felt was okay with, other than my 2 therapists I connected with during this experience. And I guess one thing during that time, there was another coworker that was really struggling. He was super struggling. I could tell. I tried to talk to him about it. I had mentioned it to other management also during that time. Hey, I there's stuff going on, and there was personal stuff, and they were kind of aware, like, somebody needs to talk to him. He's no longer with us. And that happened during that time. He did. And that was a very aha moment for me, because that was about 3 to 4 weeks after I had said, I have a problem. I knew he did, because I was in the same headspace he was. And so when that happened, that was like a kick in the pants to me of, you better get your shit straight now, because you chose a different path and you need to stick to it.
Well, your actions allowed that to happen, Scott. They did. And it's unfortunate that that happens. And for those of you that are listening right now, that maybe a lot of this may be resonating with you in some way, shape, or form, it's one of the sayings that I say in my therapeutic work. Pain knows pain.
It does.
Pain recognizes pain no matter where it comes from.
So if somebody mentions it to you, listen. If somebody reaches out and says, hey, I think this person's struggling, listen. Take a minute and hear that person out, because you might be the only people that can help them or that realize it.
And like, I love Hillary's amazing. Like, her response on that trip, I can just hear her. I can hear her saying it in my head. Sometimes you won't get that response.
No, most of the time you won't.
Yeah.
And I mean, the reason I feel I get that response is, 1, she's that genuine person. But 2, she's been there.
Yep.
She understands that that's not who I am, but that's the issue I'm dealing with. And there's ways past it. And she can see past the issues to the person. And that's one reason that we have the relationship we have, is because she sees me for me.
I think it goes beyond that. She sees you for more than just you presently.
Yeah.
She sees you for a way that you haven't been able to see yourself.
I think that's true.
Yeah. Because you mentioned something about that. I have it written down. It's probably on the front side of this, but I'll look at it in a minute. But you mentioned, like, she was your reason.
Yeah.
Like, she was the one that was like carrying the pejorative. Doesn't encompass.
No, but she was my rock.
Yes.
100%.
And yet, which is great, what does that matter if inside you're still holding on to that?
Right.
I'm flawed, broken, not enough. I must do it all. I must be the man, the husband, the father, the carry everything. And so for me, just reiterating and highlighting again, for a purpose, just how difficult those moments were, and yet essentially giving you kudos and acknowledging with you in this moment the steps that you took, picking up that phone and calling your therapist that you didn't know yet, but it was like that felt right. Sitting in that car ride until Boulder Springs,
Yeah.
and finally being like, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. Opening up about that, taking those steps. Not easy, my man.
No, and I mean, I'll reiterate it to anybody listening. The people who are truly loving you for you in your life will be there to support you. They'll be there to listen. They will be there the entire journey. For bad, worse, no matter what. So this is where things really started to change for me. I've done my ketamine treatment. I am feeling almost on top of the world. I feel literally like a reborn person. Things in my mind are starting to click. I've started to realize different things that I've never talked about in my life. I mean, ketamine's very good for treating trauma. I was able to bring out a lot of different traumas that I had gone through out my life that I never dealt with. You know, with our daughter dying, and you know, the whole situation with the divorce and alcohol and the kids getting taken. I never dealt with any of that stuff. I was able to deal with that during this ketamine treatment. I felt such a weight lifted coming out of that. And I thought there was a way and something I needed to do better. There's something better for me in this world. And so, you know, I went back to work, got my regular job back. I'm feeling great, just moving and rolling and, you know, going through things. Unfortunately, because of that, I got a black eye on me at work. Is what it is. I came, you know, it's just what happens in the business world. When something like that happens, you become the person they watch. You become the person that you got to keep an eye on this guy. Because again, they didn't know anything about this. They didn't know what was going to happen. They didn't know the residual fallout. None of this. This is all new. So I was the guy with the black eye. I was the guy that was watched and talked every little thing. I get it. 100%. I understand it. I don't judge. I don't hold anything against anybody because I probably would have done the exact same thing in the situation. But it became a bad situation because all of a sudden, all this extra pressure started coming back to me.
You became that guy.
I became that guy. But then I found, again, because of the Frankie and Jess podcast, I was now introduced to the I Love You Bro project. And Joe, the founder, was on their episode. As soon as I heard that, got off the phone, I called my therapist. I'm like, have you heard about this guy? And she's like, no, I haven't even listened to the episode yet. So I told her all about it. I'm like, I'm going to this group. You know, they're holding this group. They hold this men's group. I'm going to go to it. This sounds awesome. You know, and she's like, that's great. You need something like that because I started some regular therapy with her, but I was kind of feeling really good. And we were both like, let's just kind of see where it goes. You don't need to come see me every week.
Yep.
And I got to a good spot, but I needed something. So I found this group. Again, I had not talked about any of this stuff publicly ever in my life. Emily and Hillary are really the only two people who have heard all this at this point. So during that time, I got this crazy idea of, hey, I need to share my story. I need to somehow get into public speaking. I need to somehow start sharing this. And the idea of this podcast was born. But at the same time, I'm like, I haven't told anybody this. How can I even get on a podcast or do public speaking when I haven't got in front of anybody, told anybody this ever? And then I need this group. I need to find something for me. So, all right, here I go. I jump in and I found the next meeting that week. That episode aired on a Tuesday. I was at the group on Thursday. And I got there with full intentions. I'm going to get in front of these guys. I'm going to share everything. I'm going to just, here we go. I got in there. Whoa. All of a sudden these guys start coming in. I don't know these guys. What am I doing? I was 45 minutes early, by the way, because I was so nervous.
Of course you were.
And I walked out almost twice. Like, I'm like, I can't do this. I got to leave. But I stuck it out. All these guys start coming in. Joe, the founder, was actually there that night. Usually doesn't lead that group, but he was there. All this worked out for a reason. I'm telling you right now. Instantly, I felt comfortable. So we went around. We start every I Love You Bro group with an icebreaker question. Something fun, something whatever, something just to break the ice, something to get to know everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Went around the room, did all that. And then we opened the floor up to who's struggling, who had a win, who wants to talk. Just kind of open it up. And I'm like, all right, here we go. All right, guys, I came here for a reason. I got to do this because if I don't do this now, I don't know if I'm ready to do it. And I literally laid out a very condensed version of what I have just told.
Mm-hmm.
And every guy in that room was in tears by the end, and didn't end up taking all the time. We still had some time left. And so all the guys started talking. I was able to relate to every single one of those guys in a different way in that room. Some struggled with addiction. Some had loss. Some had, suicide attempts. Some had all these things. Every single one of us had a reason that we connected. I walked out of that meeting that night and said, this is what I need to do. Now I am one of the group leaders. Now I am heavily involved with a lot of things. Now we host the I Love You Bro Hour podcast here monthly. That group has changed my life. And being able to share my story, being able to relate to those men has been the change for me when it comes to men's mental health. It has shown me that we're not alone. It has shown me that we're all vulnerable. It has shown me we're all trying to be that tough guy and not letting those feelings out, compressing, suppressing, pushing down, over and over, layering. And what it has taught me is it's okay to be emotional. A real man, to me now, is an emotional human being. He is man enough to share his feelings. He's man enough to ask for help. He's man enough to be vulnerable. And he's man enough to step up when somebody needs the same help that they gave him. Now my perspective on men's mental health is completely changed. I share multiple parts of my story every week. There's always somebody in there that asks. Always somebody in there that needs to hear something. We joke, we laugh, we talk about the heavy stuff, and we all feel better. And it's an amazing thing to see the transition, because a year ago this weekend, I was not okay with sharing. I perceived it as weak. I perceived as not doing it by yourself weak. I perceived that I was alone in my struggles. I had to do it by myself. I know now, a year later, sitting here with you, because I know you feel the same way. We're not alone. We can do this. And we're here for each other, no matter what. No matter what you're going through. And I had a guy in the group this week that really is he's touched me all since we had the group. He's had some really severe medical situations happen to him. And I mean, it's taken his identity, is his exact words. I don't disagree with him. But the revelation I've had myself because of him saying that is, guess what? Sometimes you can't fix what's broken. You accept what you are now and you adapt to become a better person to go forward, because sometimes you cannot fix that medical thing. Sometimes it's impossible. Sometimes you lose a leg. Sometimes you get spinal injuries, whatever. But you accept that. When you accept that you can't fix that, but you can adapt and still be an amazing person and just change your life for what you're given now, that's when the real healing starts.
Where would you be if you were able to fix all those things in the past?
I don't know. I wouldn't be as strong as I am today. If I tried to just fix those.
And what if you did in some way, shape, or form? You wouldn't be the person I know. The man that's sitting before me today that I'm just like, I didn't want to interject. I'm like, let this man rift. Let him go, because you can feel it. You can sense it. And yet being able to get there to that place of acceptance, you also had to fail and fall
100%.
over and over again. And that was the most difficult thing that I seen with you, is like being able to fail again. I even wrote that down. Again, again, again.
You know, if you're not willing to fall, then how are you ever going to get back up?
And yet how many of us don't give ourselves permission
Yeah.
to fall?
Yeah.
For many various reasons. For you, it was because you had to carry literally everyone and everything on your shoulders.
Yeah. Well, and that brings up something that we didn't talk about. Last year, I reached out to you because of an incident that I was struggling with. So right after my ketamine treatment, and I was doing really good, we were on our way to Moab. And we watched a fatal accident. And we had ran out to help these people and literally watched the guy die in front of us. I'd seen, people die peacefully.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody to die in that type of situation just wrecked me because I didn't know how to deal with it. And that threw me in a spiral real fast. I reached out to you. We went to lunch. We were able to talk about it. And in our conversation, you were able to get the wheels spinning in a little bit different direction, because I was at the point where I thought I needed to go in. I thought I was in a spiral completely out of control again. But after our conversation, I was able to reach out. I was able to get some help. I was able to work through those things and figure it out, because I'd be given the tools at that point. If I was that a year before, there's absolutely no way. I don't know where that situation would have ended up. It would have been completely different.
Where it would have taken you.
Yeah.
And when you initially said that, I was like, in my head, I was like, did I answer? And then when you mentioned the details, I was like, oh, yes, I remember that.
Yeah.
And something that I often say, like coinciding with this, is I get it all the time. I think everyone gets it all the time, where it's like, I was going to reach out to you, but I didn't want, and I've heard you say, I didn't want to bother you.
Yeah.
I didn't want to put any more. I know you have so much going on. And so for me, like, I remember that moment. Like, initially I was like, did I answer? Okay, yes, I did answer. Especially when you're like, yeah, let's go get food. I'm like, woo, absolutely.
Right.
For me, it's reciprocal, because being able to sit there with you, like, allowed me to connect with, and we hadn't talked.
It'd been a while.
Yeah.
It'd probably been maybe even a year since the last time we'd actually talked or seen each other, because you had started your new job.
Yep.
I had kind of started a new thing. And so we were just busy. Life gets in the way.
Yeah.
But you were there. I mean, and I have to thank you again, because I told you I was struggling. You made time.
You let me know you were vulnerable and what your needs were.
Yeah.
And the work that you were able to put in gave you the ability to do that. And what I was saying was, when individuals tell that to me, and we all say it to ourselves, I still say it today. Jokingly, and I'm doing my best to keep my cursing to a minimum with this. Like, I tell the other individual, like, quit being a selfish asshole.
Yeah.
Quit robbing me of the opportunity to help. That passion, that fire that I just heard you speaking towards, like, just a moment ago. Like, you gave me the opportunity to tap into my own in that moment. And just like right now, like, I'm on fire right now. I'm like, let's go. Not really, but I'm like, let's go run a marathon.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
The energy right now in this room is a little, I feel like a little kid bouncing on Christmas morning. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I've got so much off my chest again. we're telling this. It is just you and me here. But within the next few weeks, I hope that over 1,000 people listen to this. I hope that one of those 1,000 people hear something that's going to help them with what they're going through today. If it's loss, if it's grief, it's addiction, if it's divorce, if it's, not talking to your kids, if it's anything, I hope that some of the information that I've been able to share today can somehow help them. And I just, it's helped me. I feel better even just sitting here with you and talking about it. And I went to suicide prevention training this morning, which is another, I mean, I got done with that and I almost called this off because that was an emotional wreck by itself. Because as we're going through that training, all of the things that we talked about, I could see myself doing exactly this time last year. Like I had all the symptoms, all the signs, and nobody's seen them. And so now I'm much more alert. I'm much more aware, and I'm going to be much more proactive because now I feel those signs. Now I know what those signs feel like because now I was able to relate. I was in that situation. I did this. I did this. I did this.
Yep.
I knew how this, and this felt. I know how this, and this looks. I hope that I'm able to help somebody when they get to that situation. I hope that by sharing this, somebody's really willing to reach out and ask for help. Reach out and ask for me. Call me. Send me an email. Reach out. Ask for Brett. Anybody. Reach out to the guys here at I Love You Bro Project. We provide free therapy for men. Call me. I'll get you set up with a therapist. These are the things now that I want to give back. I have taken so much from so many people over the years. I have caused so many people pain because of my actions and because of what I've done. Now it's my turn to give back. I can't fix the pain that I've given. I can't go back and change the things I've done. I can't change the hurt and all the things that I've done to all the people over the years because of my addictions, because of my personality, because I wasn't willing to share. But what I can do is help those now going forward with theirs. And I hope by doing that, it can help heal some of those people that I hurt.
And for me, it's recognizing and acknowledging that just because we feel alone in our pain doesn't mean that we are.
Yeah.
And that it isn't. I say this logically, many of us can understand that. You can understand that reaching out, not doing this on our own isn't a weak thing.
It's a strong thing.
And yet, being able to also acknowledge that internally, at our cores, for many of us, that sometimes always does not connect. And I think if anyone can, and absolutely will, in my opinion, connect with your story on many levels, like you may give them that ability, that permission. That's the word that I'm looking for. That's way more fitting. The permission to be okay with not being okay and to be okay with reaching out and saying help.
Yeah. Well, and I hope everybody can appreciate the fact that two guys are sitting here talking openly with no restraints. I hope that helps. Like when we started, I talked about how therapy shouldn't be scary. Therapy is a good thing. This is the reason. You and me have connected. We understand, we can feel, and we're here to help and support each other in whatever we need. And that's what therapy is about. That's what going to a support group is about. There's lots of support groups out there. I Love You Bro is just one.
Yep.
I'm very passionate about it.
Rightfully so.
But there are others if that one's not a good fit for you. If you come and you feel like it's not a good fit, reach out and let us know. We'll help you find one that is. We just want to make sure everybody's okay. We want to make sure everybody is their best person. I want to help somebody live their fullest life. I want them to be okay with sharing, be okay talking about their struggles, being okay letting it out so that at the end of the day, all that bottled up pressure doesn't blow the cap off.
Mm-hmm.
They're just slowly releasing it a little bit of a time so it doesn't blow up and implode like we talked about.
Yep. And for me, it's all about that very known but very difficult word for many of us to embrace, no. And that's connection.
Yeah.
And you've said it over and over, especially like in this last little bit. That getting vulnerable, walking through those difficulties, not knowing how Hillary was going to react in the car. She's going to dump your ass off on the side of the road.
Right.
And yet walking through it anyhow, because you wanted something different.
Yeah.
And that doing so gave you the very thing that you were so terrified of losing.
It did. It made it stronger.
Yep.
It made me better. And honestly, reminiscing, I don't know if that's the right word, but I feel like this weekend has turned into a celebration for me now.
It's a victory.
I overcome one of the hardest things I've ever had to overcome. It all started this weekend last year. And I just feel like I want to celebrate it. I want to talk about it. I want to get it out there. And that's why we're sitting here. So I guess to wrap this up,
Kind of don't want to.
I mean, we there's other stuff we really could talk about, but let's just kind of revisit. I want to ask you,
Mm-hmm.
what is your take from my first part of my episode
Mm-hmm.
to now? How do you think my vision and view of men's mental health and perception has changed over the course of my life, especially in this last year?
So within the first episode, the thing that I heard repeatedly over and over and over again is just this, honestly, and this isn't a dig, it's true for many of us. In your instance was this lost little boy just searching for love and acceptance, which sounds cliche, even coming out of my mouth. However, for me, it's the truth. It's why you did the things that you did growing up, like joining sports, and then you had that anger underneath, fighting pacing, which I love because I'm from Spanish Fork, Utah, so we know all about that.
Yeah.
But then like constantly like searching for that next thing and that next thing, and just never feeling like once you got there that it was enough, because then it was on to the next thing and on to the next thing, and just when you feel that you had it, wasn't enough. And then leading from that into what you went into here with, like you said it kind of jokingly, but there's some, like there was a reason for it, where you went out of that marriage and got into the next one, and that you were searching for something else still constantly. And then leading up to the moment a year from today, when, as I stated before, it's beyond pain at that point in time. You were suffering. That's what I choose to call it. And you wanted the suffering to end. And there's no other feeling. It's basically hell on earth when the one thing that you have to take away your pain stops working. And so you have one solution at that point in time. And you don't want it, but you do, all at once. And it doesn't come to fruition. Thankfully. And it forces you to take a different direction. And things, coincidence, lines up in such a way, and yet you chose to take those steps. Those steps of, even though this may lead to this, even though seeking out therapy with someone that resonated with my soul, I may go to this individual and they may reject me, or they may not have scheduling, and they may not have, and that's a courageous step to take. There's a lot of fear surrounding that. So that lines up. And then you go and take that step to telling your work. Didn't have to do that. You could have went on par for the course.
Right.
Yet you took that step because you wanted something different. And then you have that drive with Hillary. You didn't need to tell her, yet you wanted something different. You wanted something different. The reason why I think there was hesitation with her is because that's what you stood to lose the most. And I did find it, by the way. And I starred it for you. Hill fulfills all my needs. I say Hill. He didn't say Hill. He said Hillary. And it's like, that's great. How do you begin to fulfill your own needs?
Yeah.
And part of that was you being able to take those steps to doing something different, which is terrifying. Terrifying. I know that feeling. I know you know that feeling. What happens when I give this to you? This thing that I've been protecting, and that's what I've heard you say. This thing that you have been protecting all of your life, through everything. The beautiful stories that you were telling about your grandpa and what he meant to you, and you had to be that strong, supportive person as he was for you, paying it forward. And yet all that pain that you were protecting and have been protecting, I am now going to hand this over to these individuals, and I don't know what they're going to do with it. And if they do what I fear they're going to do with it, I don't know what that makes me.
Yeah.
I don't know what happens after that. That you're more than just this thing, but in order to get to that understanding, you had to take some very, very, very difficult steps. So you begin to take those steps. And then you hear the podcast and you hear this group. And again, something sparks within you. And so you take another step. And you didn't want to be there. You show up 45 minutes early. You want to leave twice. I'm going to read into your soul in this moment. You want to vomit as you're getting ready. Your anxiety's at a 10 as you're like, am I going to say this? Am I really going to say this? And you just throw it onto the floor. And the reaction isn't the one that you fear is going to happen.
It's completely different.
Yep. And so each one of these steps leading you into the next, and you being willing to take those steps all the way up to today and going to the suicide prevention class.
Yeah.
And being like having a reminder of the pain in your past and where it's brought you to in this moment with me.
Right.
Like with everyone listening, but in this moment right here with me, which goes counterintuitive. It's very paradoxical from where you began.
Not even the same place.
No.
No. Well, and that kind of brings me with, I guess, what I want to end with. I mean, all this has happened. And my life has taken a drastic change, a drastic course change. And now I'm seeking out further education. Within the next few months, I will be certified. I'm going to be going to the National Mental Health Council training, and I'm going to become an instructor to teach what's called mental health first aid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm excited to be able now to share my stories implemented with their course to teach others how to help people around them. I'm going to focus on with that of going to businesses, teaching management this course so that they can understand situations that I put my management in that they haven't come across yet. I want to be able to teach them how to understand it, how to deal with it, how to be the compassionate leaders that this world so much needs, and teach them how to be more human in their leadership with this course. And so that is my new passion. That is my direction. That is what I see myself evolving to, is now I have taken all this that I've learned. I'm going to go get some professional training so that now I can teach this to other people. I can teach them how to see these situations. I could teach them how to deal with these situations. I could teach them how to prevent these situations just by being more aware, by being more open, that knowing that men particularly need people to ask. We don't ask ourselves. we need somebody to engage with us. We need somebody that's been there. We need somebody who understands. And I'm hoping that I can help change that narrative in the workplace.
And in general.
And in general.
Yeah.
And in general. So that's where things are headed.
And for me, everything that I touched on leading in to that like you're able to have direction not driven by fear, driven by meaning and purpose, having made meaning out of past experiences.
Yeah.
And having wonderful, thank God, individuals in your life that were okay with you being not okay.
Yeah.
In those moments.
Yeah. And they're still here today.
Yep.
So, well, thank you. Is there anything else you want to ask me? I know you've kind of been hanging out, but is there anything else on your mind before we close this episode out?
I mean, what I want to say, and you may do this as you close this out, is that to let you know my heart is full right now. I'm extremely grateful that you called out to me and asked me to come in today. Did not know where we were going to go, the direction we were headed in. Man, I'm just, as I said previously, like I'm fired up. Like my heart is full. I'm full of gratitude for you, your friendship, who you are, the direction that you're headed in. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. So we'll close it out with that note with Brett, but I want to make sure if anybody's struggling, reach out. There is lots of resources. Very first and foremost, and the easiest one we have access to here in Utah is 988. Call that number. If there's somebody struggling that you're with, call it with them. Don't just trust that they're going to do it themselves. Take that step and call them. Get them the help they need. Reach out to myself. Reach out to the I Love You Bro Project. We'll get you into therapy. Come to one of our groups. Reach out to a therapist. Go to psychology. Is it psychology?
Psychology Today.
Psychologytoday.com. That lists all the therapists in your areas. You can reach out to them, see if they're taking. Lots of resources out there. 211 is another resource here. So reach out to them. Guys, we want everybody here. We all struggle. We all fall. We all stumble. I've been saying this saying for the last little bit. Don't get distracted by fighting all the alligators when your true mission is to clean the swamp. Don't let everything distract you from what you're really supposed to do. And if you need to take time to deal with those things distracting you, take the time, deal with them so you can get back on course to where you need to be.
Because it's too easy to be like, man, I've got this. Like where I work in residential treatment, it's never a good time.
Yeah.
And within therapy, with any taking that time for ourselves, it's never an ideal time. There is never going to be like, all right, I have 4 weeks that I can just focus on me, because it's always going to be something. So I 100% agree.
So we're going to close this out with one final message. Denzel Washington recently said this. Start your day with peace. Take the first few moments of your day. That alarm goes off. Don't grab your phone and instantly grab it. That alarm goes off. Grab your computer. We're all guilty of it. We're all guilty of grabbing the alarm, go sitting on the toilet for 10 minutes with our phone as we wake up. We all do it. Take those first few minutes of your day and spend them in peace. The alarm goes off. Wake up, put your feet on the ground, close your eyes, and just listen. Take those few moments to become with yourself, to think about your night, resonate with any dreams that you might have, and just listen to the peaceful sounds around you. Start with a couple minutes. Move up to 5. Move up to 10. Move up to 15. Whatever you're comfortable with. I challenge everybody here to start their day with a few moments of peace and see how much change your life can do by starting your day that way. Don't start your day in the chaos. Start your day in the peaceful place where we're supposed to meant to be. So with that, thank you everybody for being here. We love every single one of you. We appreciate all of your support. Again, we could not do any of this without any of you supporting us. If this resonated with you, which I hope it did, share it with somebody who needs to hear it. Share it with your friends. Share it with your family. Share it with your coworkers. If this resonated with you enough and you want me to come and talk, let me know. I'd be happy to come talk with anybody, with a group, a business, with you personally. I want to reach out. I want to help you. So we appreciate you all again. Make sure you are surviving your pickles every day, and you can always make it out of that jar. You just need to be patient. Thank you again.